When I was a child, my parents took me to the Penn Museum. Something clicked, crying and screaming. We didn't even see the exhibition. They took me to the gift shop to calm me down. This can encapsulate the museum experience. It can feel very scary. And if you asked my parents if they think I would grow up to work in museums, the answer probably would have been no. And I thought I would be in Los Angeles for 2 months, and now it's close to 2 decades. I'm really interested in how museums can be reimagined where we can experience joy together in profound ways. If museums have audience in your mission, you think very broadly about who those audiences might be. And I was like, I have this wild idea for a drag show in a museum, and we just did it. And it was really amazing. And I also have an arts practice, so if anyone is curious what I make,
Welcome to Angel City Culture Quest, where art, social justice, and the environment meet in Los Angeles. I am your host, Melina Paris, and I welcome you to this episode. Hello, culture lovers. This is your host, Melina Paris. For several months, we have been bringing you inspiring guests along with stimulating content about their work. As with anything, there are costs to keep this podcast going. So if you're able, join me in this quest with your support. Think of it as a cultural tip jar to share any amount that you're comfortable with. Or you can make a regular offering with as little as $4 a month. This will contribute to my ability to continue bringing you the great work of these artists, activists, and others, plus the cultural content that you want to hear about. I appreciate you, and I would be honored to have your support. To join, please go to our Patreon link at patreon.com/Angel City Culture Quest. There, you can also see all of our past episodes, get early announcements, and find more perks to come. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Angel City Culture Quest. Today, we have an exciting show. We're speaking with Holly M. Crawford, who is the Los Angeles County Museum of Art Director of Adult Public Programs, Education, and Public Programs. But you'll quickly discover why I call Holly M. LACMA's Director of Fun, Joy, and Creativity. Hello, Holly M. How are you?
Hi, Melina. I'm doing well. I've had my coffee this morning, and I'm just happy to be in conversation with you.
Thank you. For our purposes today, I'm going to read the first portion of LACMA's mission statement now, and the remainder of it later on in the episode. Located on the Pacific Rim, LACMA is the largest art museum in the western United States, with a collection of more than 147,000 objects that illuminate 6,000 years of artistic expression across the globe. Committed to showcasing a multitude of art histories, LACMA exhibits and interprets works of art from new and unexpected points of view that are informed by the region's rich cultural heritage and diverse population. Today, we will discuss the projects Holly M. brings to the public at LACMA in terms of education and programming and connecting those programs to the diverse Los Angeles audience. And later, we will discuss LACMA's exciting exhibition, Lee Alexander McQueen, Mind, Mythos, Muse, including several of the programs the museum is offering in conjunction with the exhibition. First, some details about our guest. Holly M., who uses they/them pronouns, is an artist and educator who is passionate about reimagining museums as sites for healing, connection, and creative invention. In their role at LACMA, Holly develops and implements programs that inspire joy and invite learners to expand their understanding of themselves and the world. I encourage our listeners to go to our show notes, where you'll find not only more but intriguing information about Holly M. including their previous director position at ESMOA and their own art practices. So before we dive in, Holly M. is going to share their origin story, which begins at the Penn Museum in Philadelphia.
So when I was a young child, my parents took me on a trip to Philadelphia. We were going to the Penn Museum, which, if listeners are familiar, it's an encyclopedic museum, but a fairly large portion of the collection focuses on Egyptology, as well as artworks and objects that are thousands of years old. And I was very excited to see an exhibition that they had about mummies because at the time I was fairly obsessed with a Sesame Street production called Don't Eat the Pictures. And it's a phenomenal film where the cast of Sesame Street gets locked in the Met Museum. And some listeners might be familiar with it. And if you're not, you can find it online. We had a wonderful day, took this romantic ride by train. We took photographs in the courtyard of the Penn Museum. And I should say the Penn Museum has a special place in my family history because it's where my parents went on a date. I think my mom even graduated from X-ray school in the garden. So it was all fairly usual run-of-the-mill. And then when we actually got into the gallery, something clicked. I don't know what it was, if it was fear or everything just felt so big in the moment. But I just remember crying and screaming very loudly. We didn't even see the exhibition. My dad had to pick me up and take me out of the gallery. And I remember, I think they took me to the gift shop to calm me down, and he might have bought me a bracelet. And I think that story, it kind of can encapsulate the museum experience for some audiences for the first time. It can feel very scary. It can feel like a violation. It can feel not so great. And if you asked my parents, did they think I would grow up to work in museums, the answer probably would have been, well, after that first experience, no, not really. So I think I find myself, and maybe they find themselves, pleasantly surprised that I've now been in the field for close to 2 decades. And this has been not just a career, but also a personal passion.
That's clear. You mentioned earlier that what drives you to be in museums is that they can be magical places that transport you. Your origin story presents insight, I think, into the very special work you do in museums in terms of making museums welcoming spaces and bringing joy to them. Can you describe for us what your job entails as Director of Adult Public Programs, Education, and Public Programs?
I can try to summarize it because I feel like I'm learning something new every day. But my main goal, my main priority is to develop innovative, thoughtful, and responsive programming that aligns with LACMA's special exhibitions and also the permanent collection to reach art audiences across the city, across the county, and I'd also say worldwide, because LACMA's institutional footprint is very large. It's a place for scholarship, as we know, but I think also since the start of the pandemic, there has been a pivot to doing virtual programming. More audiences have been able to visit LACMA in ways that they might not have been able to before.
So as an example of the programs that you're involved with that are happening now at LACMA is LACMA and Snapchat, Monumental Perspectives, Collection 2. And folks can find that app in the Apple or Google store. The collection brings together artists and technologists to create augmented reality monuments. These monuments explore just some of the histories of LA communities in an effort to highlight perspectives from across the region. The second cohort of artists examine changing landscapes and memory as a way to connect the past and the present through augmented reality experiences. These are titled The River Once Ran on the iconic half-mile-long mural, The Great Wall of Los Angeles by Judy Baca, What the Willow Whispers by Sandra de la Losa, and La Revolución es la Solución by Kang Sung Lee. Can you tell us a little bit about these experiences?
Yes. So maybe I'll actually work backwards. So starting with Kang Sung Lee's La Revolución es la Solución. and forgive my pronunciation. So Kong's monument, actually, I first saw the drawings in 2015. They were on view at Commonwealth and Council on I think it was the 25th anniversary of the LA uprising. So coming into this position and knowing that he would be one of the artists selected for this work, I recognized the source material right away. And it's an incredible monument where Kong brings together the histories of the LA uprising and what happened in the aftermath of community members, activists coming together to rebuild and to heal, and tells the story through the use of Korean kites. Korean kites, typically on the new year, you build kites and you release them. So you're releasing your hopes and wishes for the new year into the sky. So when you open the app, you'll see these amazing kites. And as you click on each one, it'll tell you a little bit more about a story of the LA uprising. And one of the most recognizable stories, I think, is the murder of Latasha Harlins, who was a 15-year-old African-American girl who was shot by a Korean-American owner of the Empire liquor store. And we developed a program in Latasha's former neighborhood and at Elgin Sutton Park, which is a new partner, really beautiful park. And my colleagues and I thought it would be wonderful to kind of bring the kites into the real world with a kite making workshop. And it was just incredible. These handmade kites that were led by two amazing artists, Stevie and Dajin, who are incredible teachers and collaborators. And in addition, we also had a blog post commissioned by scholar Yancy Perez. Yancy writes about the deportation of Central Americans after the LA uprising. A blog post and a workshop that I think complement Kong's monument and shows the level of research and time and commitment to telling these histories about the LA uprising.
The whole history. And it's interesting that he stated in the video on LACMA's site that the title comes from graffiti on the wall in the 1992 uprisings. And can you elaborate a little bit about what the Willow and Whispers is and the River Once Ran?
Absolutely. So Los Angeles artist Sandra De La Loza was the artist in residence at Irvin Magic Johnson Park. And with her monument, she imagines the creek that once flowed near the park. This kind of leads into what I'll talk about next with the River Once Ran. But in case everyone there is a river in Los Angeles. It's called the Los Angeles River. Historically, it's a river that has flooded and receded, and there's movement to it. But in the 1950s, the Army Corps of Engineers made the decision to concrete the river. And in what the Willow Whispers, the creek that would have run through there would have been one of the last tributaries that would take the river out to the Pacific Ocean. But it had also historically been like part of a major ranchero, and then over time I think it became a dumping ground. Wow. So when they restored the park, there was really this emphasis on reintroducing indigenous plants to the area that could actually heal the land, pull the toxins out, which is fascinating in and of itself, and also the creation of this amazing park that is used by local residents. And if you haven't been to the park, I highly encourage you to. It's just amazing. But what the Willow Whispers refers to the Aurora willow trees that would have grown along Compton Creek. So it's a vision of native plants and wildlife and seasonal transformation. And it also has an original soundtrack provided by LA's Carlos Niños and Friends, who some might be very familiar with.
Yeah.
It's an amazing project. And then The River Once Ran. So it transforms the basin of the LA River into a landscape full of plant and animal life. And you can see it at Judy Baca's half-mile mural, The Great Wall of Los Angeles. And really, you can see these monuments at their locations, which you can find on LACMA's website. But if you have the Snapchat app, you can open it up and you can see them anywhere. So again, I think that comes back to kind of audience reach. If you're using Snapchat's app at all, you'll see these monuments and there'll be explanatory information that puts into context the location of these monuments and why they're there.
That's great. And that's great accessibility too. I wanted to mention there's also a poetry show, September 19th, titled Poetry in Color, a virtual slam inspired by Judy Baca's The River Once Ran. Poets will present original poems in response to themes of location, history, and social movements. Which leads me into the fact I also think that it's fascinating that you came to LA for Judy Baca.
I did. Judy is I call her my art parent or my art mom. I met her in graduate school. I was actually completing my master's program, and she was in town to receive an award, and she talked to our class about her life and just left with an open invitation that if you're in the Los Angeles area to come and work on the restoration of the Great Wall of Los Angeles, which started in 2009 and went all the way through 2011. And I did. I came out to work on the restoration, and I thought I would be in Los Angeles for 2 months just working. And now it's been over 10 years, I think 12 years. I like to say it's a decade and some change because I can't believe it's been that long.
Yeah.
I really learned a lot about the history of Los Angeles and California working on the Great Wall of LA. It was an education in and of itself. I'm still really proud to have been a part of it. And after my time working on the Great Wall, I did end up working at the Social and Public Art Resource Center, and that's Spark in Venice, California, for about a year doing different types of administrative work. My relationship with Judy goes way back, so working on this program with her, it really does feel like it's come full circle.
That's wonderful. I think that's great. So what are some of the most important attributes and goals of the programs that you develop?
Yeah, I'm really interested in how museums can be reimagined to be sites of creativity for healing, and also spaces where we can come together, where we can experience joy together, and where we can learn more about ourselves in sometimes really profound ways. And I think my guiding question is, well, okay, how do you build on that? How do you make these programs a joyful experience? And how do we bring joy into the museum space? So I think that's an ongoing question, and I'm very lucky I get to work with thoughtful, creative colleagues whose aims are similar.
Yeah. And you had mentioned, given the location of the park, there is a long, long history of music and jazz pioneers in that area. And Sandra De La Losa found that, and she really wanted those things to come out in the program. I think you mentioned you had collaborated with Sandra De La Losa in ideas for engaging people who go to that park, Irvin Magic Johnson Park. And then that led to the original soundtrack by Carlos Nino and Friends. So again, a full circle event.
Yeah, actually, Sandra's maybe like a wonderful example of kind of cultivating joy through these programs, because Sandra has a long history with Irvin Magic Johnson Park. So by the time we came in to work on programming with her, the lens was in development and the soundtrack was in development. And Sandra had very clear ideas about how she wanted to do programming. One was to do a musical performance with Carlos Munoz and Friends that was more akin to like a sound bath. It was a concert in the park. It was free. It was open. I believe it was one of the first musical activations in the park, which is really, really great. And then the second was a nature walk. I think back in June, we worked with a local healer and developed in concert with her a plant guide. So actually, if you go to LACMA.org, you can see this art activity guide that is created in development with What the Willow Whispers, and you can download it, take it with you, learn more about the indigenous plants in the area and their histories, and also do some plant illustration along the way. I don't know why I'm getting giddy just thinking about that, but that just brings me a lot of joy.
That sounds fun. That truly sounds fun. Yeah. So do you work in partnership with K through 12 and other educational institutions?
Yes, we do. And that's a broad question, so I'm going to try to synthesize it as much as I can. So within the education department, there are different nodes. There's family and youth programming, there's gallery learning, community engagement, and public programs. And we're all working towards the same goal. And one of my favorite things to do is collaboration. So I've been fortunate in the short time that I've been at LACMA, it's coming up to a year, I've partnered with my colleagues in youth and family programs on Andale Family Sundays, which is a great free event. Families come together and make art together. One of our first events to happen back on the LACMA campus after the onset of the pandemic was a partnership with Metro LA for the We Are Metro projects. That was our first on-site workshop. We had this just huge art-making carnival with at least with my new start time with Andale Family Sunday and Metro. It was amazing. So yeah, we're always trying to find ways to work together, which is really exciting.
One of those programs also handle a lot of the adult art making workshops that serve audiences who might have Alzheimer's or other cognitive deterioration. So again, the access that is being offered is wonderful. What kind of public programming around arts have you found that Angelenos value the most?
This is a great question. And, I don't want to fall into the trap of assuming what audiences want. And I think this is where data can be very helpful. One of our long-term goals is to assess and evaluate our programs and not just look at attendance numbers, but also see what's of value to our community. What are pressing needs at the moment? I want to stay very nimble when it comes to developing programs. And I think a strong suit of our department, the Education Public Programs Department in general, is experimentation. And sometimes I think that maybe a wild idea that I have and, might lead to, well, who would come to this? But you'll always amaze yourself, I think, when you share that wild idea, because it inevitably will speak to someone. And I think the other reason I don't want to fall into this trap of assuming what someone wants is that art is something that we live and breathe every day. It's not necessarily something that everyone will go to the museum for. But again, museums can be sites of creativity. They can be sites of joy. So I want to really work on cultivating relationships in that space.
And the experimentation that you're afforded with that. So what have you seen folks respond to positively with the programming?
Yes, I was trying to think of all the programs that I've been a part of these last few months, and these are some highlights for me. There's a wonderful program called Mindful Monday. Some audiences might be familiar with this already. It's an opportunity for audiences to gather together to look at, reflect on, and converse about artworks featured in special exhibition or permanent collection. And it's facilitated by my wonderful colleague, Elizabeth Gerber. And we have an open invitation as rotating out co-hosts from the department on a regular basis. And so I was invited to co-host the program in May for Family Album, which is currently on view at Charles White Elementary School until July 30th. Charles White Elementary School, it has a gallery, and it's open on Saturdays from 1 to 4. And it's an incredible exhibition, Family Album, that is photographs from the LACMA collection and does feature photographs from Janet Ireland and Danielle Bowman. And this program does have a steady following, and we received really great feedback from the exhibition curator who came to the event. That was really nice. I should say this was held on Zoom. Historically, this was a program that would meet in the galleries at LACMA, but has been a program that has transitioned to Zoom. And it invites audiences really from all over the world. I think one time I went to an early program and there was a guest from Australia, which was really fun. And that's a program where I was getting emails about it soon after, like, thank you, it was lovely. And it was really interesting that guests would share some very vulnerable things with you about what came up for them during this act of looking. I think the kite workshop for Kang Sung Lee's AR lens was just magical. I don't have any other word for it. And we really did work closely with the park staff and the council district actually to create that program.
Must have been so uplifting with the kites.
It really was. And I don't know if I have the words for it. Thankfully, we took a lot of documentation that day, and I will not forget this. There was a group of teens that hang out at the park, and they were lovely. I mean, they were so silly and fun and curious. And if we had been having a contest for whose kite flew the highest, they would have won. As soon as these kites got up into the air, you just watched them take off. And it was just, you were mystified by it. And then you just saw everybody coming together. They were curious about the kites. They wanted to make one. They wanted to see if they could fly theirs as high as they could. And it was just beautiful. And to do that at the same time, honoring the memory of Latasha Harlins, I think it really encapsulated what we really wanted from that workshop.
Wow. And there's one more with a great title.
Yeah, LOL with LACMA. This is a new project that I'm working in concert on our VP of Education and Public Programs, Chelo Montoya. And LOL with LACMA, it's inviting comics writers to tour the gallery or to tour an exhibition and look at objects in a different way. So our first featured comedian, who I should also mention is a badass writer, and that's in her bio, Sandra Valls. Sandra took audiences on a tour of the Mishpantli exhibition through this great exploration of Indigenous artworks, artifacts, and contemporary maps, charting histories of the Indigenous origins of Mexico. If anybody had the opportunity to see Mishpantli, it's an incredible show that re-examines this idea of conquest of Mexico. It was amazing working with Sandra. She was so curious and just wanted to know everything. And she's so freaking funny. And just really presented the content in a different way. It didn't lose its scholarship. It didn't lose any of that. And we did that in concert with the wonderful curators. So they were part of that. They were part of that experiment. They were part of that initiative every step of the way. And this was a program that had aired on Zoom. It was one that we would love to have in person, but decided that we would do it on Zoom. And it was one of the most requested, like, when's it going to be on YouTube? Has it been uploaded yet? And it was just great to hear from teachers who are, reviewing content like this with their students. This is wonderful. I think also for, just anyone who's a little bit curious about history and about art, it was really, really enjoyable and really fun. And I think, Sandra summed it up best with history is not always what we learn in school. And, we should just always be learning. And there are many different ways to learn. So I think LOL with LACMA captured that pretty well. So really looking forward to developing that program more, because in Los Angeles, there, comedians and writers abound.
There's a lot to work with there. How refreshing. LOL with LACMA. That's great. So, Holly, have you found any gaps in public programming for the community that LACMA has been able to address or fill?
It's a really great question and a really big question. I think going back to experimentation, right now there's a lot of opportunity to experiment with what will programming look like as LACMA prepares to move into its new building, which is currently under construction. So like right now, thinking about lectures, like a traditional lecture symposium per se, we don't necessarily have the space for it. So we've had to get very creative about how that might be offered, or even like, would a lecture complement a program, knowing that maybe we don't have space? Can we think about a new way to engage artists or curators or thought partners in a conversation or in a dialogue? I think also too, thinking about human power in the space. I think there's so many wonderful ideas and programs that we'd like to do. It's just also a question of having a team that's robust that can carry those things out. So I think it's a period of where LACMA is assessing those program areas, experimenting with different ideas and new ways that we can present programming to our audiences. But I also just want to say that there are amazing things that are happening behind the scenes that might not always be fully visible to the museum-going public. Public programming is a little different because it's a very visible space, but there's just amazing things that are happening in various departments where colleagues are connecting LACMA to the different communities that we serve in innovative and really thoughtful and creative ways. So I think that's my reflection on that.
Yeah, it's a work in process always.
Always.
So now I'm going to read the second portion of LACMA's mission. LACMA's spirit of experimentation is reflected in its work with artists, technologists, and thought leaders, as well as its regional, national, and global partnerships to share collections and programs, create pioneering initiatives, and engage new audiences. So it sounds very much like what you just said, and I'm wondering, how do LACMA's public programs connect with the museum's overall mission?
Yeah. Coming back to this spirit of experimentation, this spirit of innovation, a willingness and a great aptitude to work with artists and different thought partners locally and around the world to create programming, I think is our ethos, really. And in that way, I see a very strong connection. I see public programming taking the mission and running with it.
That's great. You said sometimes you feel like all paths trace back to education, too. The public programs do, but with fun, in fun and innovative ways.
Yes.
So talking about fun, You had shared a great story about a presentation you did right before the shutdown at a museum conference for the California Association of Museums. You spoke to a packed room to this audience whose purpose was to engage with museum audiences and rethink programming. And what did you tell them?
Oh my gosh. I told them I just wanted to have a drag show in a museum, and that's what I did. And I don't know if that's what my fellow colleagues were expecting at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. To try to contextualize what this specific talk was about, too, it was looking at evaluation models and how to engage audiences. And I had a dear colleague that was presenting about this amazing evaluation project that they had done that took a number of years and really kind of gave a very holistic view of the audience that was coming to their institution and what they were looking for, what they needed, where they were as a viewer. And then I came in and I was like, I have this wild idea for a drag show, and we just did it. But there's a little bit more to that as well. And I should say this is during my time as Director of Education at ESMOA in El Segundo, California. ESMOA is a non-collecting institution, so very different from LACMA. It's non-collecting, a smaller staff footprint, I should say. And as ESMOA does not have a permanent collection, they have thematic experiences that transform the gallery every couple of months. So at the time that I was sharing about this experience, there was a thematic experience called Oz, and it really looked at the impressive pop cultural influence that the Oz stories have had on American pop culture. And it was also the 100th year anniversary of Oz at the time.
You're talking about The Wizard of Oz?
The Wizard of Oz, yes.
Okay, thank
you. The Wizard of Oz is the 100th year anniversary of The Wizard of Oz. And I should also say that as a queer identified person, The Wizard of Oz has its place in the queer community as well. And actually, there's a wonderful quote. It's not in the film, but if you read the book, the original Wizard of Oz, I'm going to totally butcher this. Dorothy says something akin to, I'd rather have my friends be queer than not have any friends at all. I don't think that's quite right. I feel like she says it in a much more beautiful way. But it really seems to embrace queerness, even at a time that this book was published. I don't think that was the intention of the author. But I just happened to see, on Instagram, where I do a lot of research, I was seeing drag venues and spaces do these amazing Oz-themed shows. I was like, well, why can't we do that in our space? We're connecting artworks in this gallery to this amazing artistry that is happening all the time. It's a living, breathing, I'm speaking about drag, it's a living, breathing artwork. And we just did it. And it was really amazing. And we didn't even have to build a stage or anything. The gallery had been transformed, that we had a yellow brick road, which is all this amazing yellow vinyl brick that was way easier to put down than it was to pull up. But that became our runway. And I should say this was all pre-COVID, so we weren't thinking about social distancing at that point. But I wanted to use that experience and that exhibition as my prime example, I think, because it goes back to what I said about I had this wild idea and I wasn't sure if people would come, but I was just like, let's just do it because I think it's going to be fun. I think it would bring a lot of joy. It'll connect the art to the everyday. And it really did that. After I shared, and as conferences are, there's usually time at the end for a Q&A. I should also say no one left the room during this. It was a little surreal. The room stayed packed the entire time. I think we had 45 minutes to present, so it was still packed the entire time. I was really, I don't want to say I was surprised, but I was genuinely very moved at the end by some of the questions from colleagues about any challenges that had come up, did we have a supportive board? What about the immediate audience of the community that we were in? And at any time did I run into any interference, I should say. And I just remember very clearly thinking, well, if ESMO has a very simple mission, which is to spread the spark of creativity, and I was like, look, I'm aligned with my mission. That's to spread the spark of creativity. It's something that it's interesting and it's fun. And I think if museums have audience in your mission, you think very broadly about who those audiences might be and what they might feel compelled to attend or maybe not to attend. And I think so too, public programs, we're not just concerned about the numbers. We really want to create these experiences where audiences can come together, they can learn together, they can be joyful together. But sometimes we do have to face that sometimes a program isn't going to be for everybody. It might be very niche, but I think there will always be a public program for everyone. And I think we can learn from that too. And I think for me, from that program, it did all the things that I think a really successful program can do. And if no one liked it, I never heard about it because they never came. So it's
Yeah. And you were talking about doing the due diligence of being broad to the whole community. And that just encapsulates some programs are for some people and some programs are for other people, but all the different people can come to the various offerings of the museum. So that's great. If you're just tuning in, we're talking with Holly M. Crawford, Director of Adult Public Programs at Los Angeles County Museum of Art. Thank you for listening. The Symposium by Holly M., titled 8th R.L. Shep Triennial Symposium, in conjunction with Lee Alexander McQueen Mind Mythos Muse, presents videos on YouTube every last Tuesday of the month. It started in May and runs through August. And you had said that more people will have seen these videos than if it was a one-day in-person event. So there's silver linings.
There are silver linings to everything. Yes, the R.L. Shep Triennial Symposium, it's a symposium that takes place every 3 years. It is put on through the Costume and Textiles Department at LACMA, which is an amazing department, and I have just learned so much from working with the wonderful curatorial team there. So it just so happened that this year would be one of the years for the Shep. And at the time that I came on board to the project, I think it was January of 2022. So we were again seeing cases in COVID on the rise. And at the time, we just didn't know when the exhibition opened, if we would be in a place that we could offer the symposium to a live audience. And wanting to be mindful of that, we asked the funder, would you be open to presenting the symposium as a virtual series this year? And they were, which is really exciting because funders and board members, they have their roles in the museum space as well. And when you can advocate and have their support for something, that's huge. So yes, they said that we could have this program on YouTube. So very early, we started planning how this would happen, worked with a wonderful local director and videographer, Night Flare, which is an LA-based video arts and cultural production service. And on YouTube right now, you can see the first 2 films in the series. One, the very first, is a conversation with McQueen curators Clarissa Esquera and Michaela Hansen in conversation with John Matheson, who is an amazing archivist and documentarian of McQueen. A little shout out to John. They run the Instagram account, the McQueen Vault. You'll be there for hours, just scrolling.
I pretty much was, yeah.
And then the second video that's up right now is about costume display and discourse. So audiences will hear from the amazing Melinda Kirsten. Melinda effectively designs the mounts for how costume would be displayed, and they're displayed beautifully in this exhibition. And then also Michael Schmidt, who's a jewelry designer who had a personal relationship with Lee Alexander McQueen and built these amazing headpieces that are featured in the show. And the next videos will be looking at Scanners, which is a collection that McQueen did in winter 2003, 2004, that will bring in curators from the Asian history departments. And then the last video will be hearing from the amazing person who brought the McQueen collection to LACMA, and also looking at the influences of artists like Picasso and Goya on one of his collections.
That's a lot of content, but it's all so fascinating.
Really, really is. I'm so happy they're on YouTube because I think maybe historically, just looking at the numbers for the symposium, costume and textile history, I think they really speak to a very broad audience. Even when there's a really heavy focus on one particular area, there is so much we can learn about costume and textile. And actually, I'm really excited for video 3 because we see how ideas are passed through art and culture through the sharing of textiles. It's really amazing. And I'm just so happy that we could present these as films because they will be online for a very long time. And I really get excited thinking about the fashion student who's really interested in either McQueen or interested in the many different nodes that this journey can encapsulate and take us on, finding this as a resource and using it for their own research. And they didn't necessarily have to worry about traveling too far. You know, they can hopefully open up their phone, open up a tablet, open up a computer, and be part of this program for as long as they want.
It's very detailed. You had mentioned that John Matheson, who was in the first video, the archivist, you said that he hits the nail on the head on why McQueen continues to have influence. To summarize, Matheson in the video said, McQueen was doing vast storytelling that delves into socio-political, art history, cinema, pop culture references. He added contextualizing McQueen's designs within art history and different art mediums is the next evolutionary step in McQueen's career. These pairings continue the dialogue. They create conversations about things. Some are uncomfortable, some are celebratory, but it allows a view of his clothing in a very modern way that lives beyond just that moment in time. And he did. He hit the nail on the head. I had heard of McQueen, and I appreciated him as a designer. I didn't know the depth of his study that was revealed in just the first 2 videos that I watched. So there's a wealth of information in there, and I definitely encourage our listeners to check them out. So now let's discuss the programs that LACMA is offering around the McQueen exhibition. You talked about the scanners. That's the next video, right? The scanners collection?
Yes, Scanners and Art History will be the next video that drops on July 26th. It's coming up soon.
It'll be there. And then there was the next one, I guess, looks into the painting by Copley.
Oh, yes. We're starting to get into the other programs for Lee Alexander McQueen. In LACMA's collection, there is a painting by John Singleton Copley entitled Portrait of Hugh Montgomery, later 12th Earl of Eglinton. And there's been a lot of scholarship around this piece. And it's a piece that depicts a great deal of violence, especially against Cherokee people. I hope it's becoming more clear that public programs are not created in a vacuum or solely from the sole perspective of the programmer. They are done in collaboration with curators and with thought partners and artists. And our curators very early on really wanted to address this piece and wanted to do it in a very thoughtful way and approached us about forming a partnership with Native Voices at the Autry. Native Voices at the Autry is the only equity theater company dedicated exclusively to developing and producing new work by Native American artists. And we've been collaborating now together for almost half a year, but they have created an original performance that will examine false narratives in art through humor, storytelling, and Indigenous experience, but using the Copley painting as the starting point. So that is coming to LACMA in August, actually I'm not sure when the podcast will come out, but it will be Sunday, August 28th.
It'll be in time for that, definitely. And you were just talking about the context of the painting being interesting because Lee Alexander McQueen was outspoken about the Highland clearances and the abuses of the English government in Scotland. And you mentioned that there's many similarities of Scotland being colonized by the English and then the colonization that was happening in the Americas around the same time.
Yep.
There's a lot to unravel there.
Absolutely.
That's going to be an exciting program. And then there's one more because actually the Lee Alexander McQueen Mind Mythos Muse will run to October 9th. So in September, you have another program with Sancha and Olima. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, and that will be the following month, September 25th. So audience may know McQueen was an openly gay man, and his influence is felt. He's been gone for over a decade now, and his influence is still palpable, especially in Los Angeles. So we've partnered with Sancha and Olima for a program called Procession, an evocation for McQueen. And it tells this story of how McQueen has influenced LA's Latina queer nightlife and DIY culture. I think it's going to look like a McQueen runway show, like literally just walked off the runway and into the real world.
That's wonderful. That sounds very exciting.
And I also want to say, too, that both of these programs will be free. Just audiences are encouraged to RSVP because both of these programs are not stagnant or staged. They're roving. So we're going to be moving to different parts of the campus, which is very exciting. So we just want everyone to make sure that you RSVP for your ticket, and your RSVP will get you into the McQueen exhibition. You got to have your ticket and check in at the box office.
Some important housekeeping. Now, I wanted to clarify, I think I said it was September 26th, but is it 25th for Sancha and Olima?
Yes, both of these programs, I hope we've made it easy. They're both going to be on Sundays. So like the last Sundays in August and September. So August 28th for Native Voices will be at LACMA, and then Sunday, September 25th for
25th.
Yeah.
September 25th. We've got it.
And we can put those in the show notes, right? So we got
Yes, definitely. And there's going to be, as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be more information on Holly. And also in our show notes, I'm going to attach the videos of the symposium so people can check that out. I will also add the link for LACMA so they can find out more about the Lee Alexander McQueen Mind, Mythos, Muse exhibition and hear those discussions. And Holly M., where can people find you and find out more about your work?
Absolutely. I am taking a little break from social media, but you can find me on Instagram at Holly M. Crawford. And I also have an arts practice. So if anyone is curious what I make, in addition to producing programming, you can find me at Holly M. Crawford Studio. And you can also visit me at work, come to a program, say hi. I will apologize in advance if I am running around doing fine tuning or other things.
Running around spreading joy.
Running around spreading joy. Exactly. Curiosity is the spark to our lifelong learning and our enjoyment. So if you want to find out more, just, come visit LACMA. Please take part in our programming. I think there is something for everyone.
There definitely is. Well, Holly M. Crawford, thank you so much for talking to us today about you and about the programming and the exciting exhibition, Lee Alexander McQueen, Mind, Mythos, Muse. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melina. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.